My name is Suzan Denis. I am 52 years old. On July 4th, 2025, my heart stopped beating for 8 minutes while I was at a church gathering. During that time, I saw something that completely changed how I understood my faith. I discovered that something I always thought was perfectly fine was actually destroying people's souls and pushing them away from God forever. That Independence Day, our church held its yearly gathering and special service. After the meal, we gathered in the main worship area for a service about the freedoms we have in Christ. Our pastor was preaching about how Jesus had set us free from being slaves to sin. I sat in my usual seat in the third row, listening and occasionally looking around to see who had come. That is when I noticed Lisa Morrison, a young mother from our church, sitting alone with her 3 small children. Her husband was not with her, which seemed unusual, and she looked exhausted and stressed. Her oldest boy was behaving badly, and I could see her getting more and more embarrassed as he continued acting out. Without thinking, I leaned over to my friend Carol sitting beside me and whispered, "Something is definitely wrong with the Morrison family. Mark never misses church, and look how worn out Lisa looks. I wonder if they are having marriage problems." Carol nodded knowingly and whispered back, "I noticed that too." "And did you see how much weight she has lost?" "I am worried about her." We kept whispering throughout the service, guessing about what might be wrong, sharing observations about how Lisa looked and acted, and discussing what we thought the church should do to help. We told ourselves we were being caring and observant, but we were actually gossiping about a struggling family during a worship service. It was during this conversation that I felt the first sharp pain in my chest. At first I thought it was just indigestion from the rich food at the gathering, but the pain got worse quickly, spreading down my left arm and up into my jaw. I knew what these symptoms meant. I tried to get my husband Robert's attention, but the pain was so bad I could not speak. The last thing I remember was falling forward in my seat while the pastor was reading from the Bible about the freedom Christ had given us. I collapsed right there in church, surrounded by people who had known me for decades. Robert immediately started CPR while someone called for an ambulance. The emergency team arrived within minutes, but my heart had already stopped. For 8 minutes, I was clinically dead. The medical team worked desperately to bring me back, using every technique they had. But during those 8 minutes, I was not in the church building anymore. I found myself standing in a place of beauty and light beyond description. It was not harsh or blinding light, but warm, living light that seemed to pulse with love and truth. I felt completely peaceful, more awake than I had ever been in my life, and free from all physical pain. That is when I saw him. Jesus stood before me, and he was absolutely magnificent, nothing like the paintings I grew up seeing. He radiated pure holiness and divine power that immediately brought me to my knees. When his eyes met mine, I felt both embraced by perfect love and completely exposed, with every pretense stripped away. "Susan," he said, and hearing my name from his lips felt like coming home to a place I never knew existed. "Lord," I whispered, finally understanding what that word truly meant. But instead of the comfort I expected, he asked me a question that pierced my soul. "Susan, do you know why so many who call themselves mine still lose their way?" Before I could answer, everything around us changed. I found myself looking at what seemed like an enormous congregation, thousands and thousands of people who were clearly Christians. They sang worship songs, raised their hands in praise, carried Bibles, wore crosses, and posted encouraging scripture on their phones. From far away, it looked like a beautiful picture of Christians worldwide. But as Jesus directed my attention closer, I began to see something horrifying. Every single person in this huge group was bound by chains. Not physical chains, but spiritual ones that wrapped around their mouths, their necks, their hearts. And these chains were not made of metal. They were made of words. "Look closer," Jesus said gently. As I focused on individual people, I could see the words that formed their chains. Gossip, lies, criticism, judgment, rumors, harsh words, cruel jokes, thoughtless comments. Each word was like a link in the chain, and the chains grew heavier and tighter with every careless word spoken. But what shocked me most was that these people did not seem to realize they were bound. They continued their worship, their service, their Christian activities, completely unaware that their own words had imprisoned them spiritually. "This is the sin of the tongue," Jesus explained, his voice filled with both sorrow and urgency. "Careless speech, gossip, slander, criticism. They think it is small, harmless, even innocent. But it destroys love, divides my people, and sends millions into bitterness and unbelief." He showed me closer views of what was happening. I watched a woman in a Bible study sharing a prayer request about her neighbor's marriage problems, giving details that were not hers to share. With each word, another link was added to her chain. I saw a man at a church meeting criticizing the pastor's sermon preparation, questioning his dedication, and weakening his authority with carefully worded concerns. The chains around his mouth grew thicker with every sentence. I watched a group of teenagers at youth group making fun of a classmate's appearance, disguising their cruelty as humor. The spiritual chains wrapped tighter around their hearts with each laugh. Most heartbreaking, I watched how the words spoken by these chained Christians affected their targets. I saw marriages destroyed by gossip that spread through churches like wildfire. I watched church splits happen not because of different beliefs, but because of hurt feelings and damaged reputations caused by careless words. I saw faithful church members walk away from their faith entirely because they could not bear the constant criticism and judgment they faced from other believers. The very people who should have been encouraging them were driving them away with their words. "Every careless word will be accounted for," Jesus said, his voice carrying absolute truth. "What looks harmless in the moment carries eternal weight. My people do not see it, but their careless words are tools in the enemy's hands." Then he showed me something even more disturbing. I watched as each careless word was like a spark falling into dry grass. These sparks started spiritual fires that spread through families, churches, and entire communities. One seemingly innocent conversation about someone's struggles could lead that person to despair, doubt their faith, and walk away from God entirely. A casual criticism of a church leader could weaken the faith of dozens of people who heard it. A rumor shared in confidence could destroy a family's reputation and their children's trust in the church. "Look at yourself, Susan," Jesus said. Suddenly I was watching my own life from his perspective. I saw myself over the years thinking I was being a caring Christian while actually spreading information that was not mine to share. I watched myself destroy people's privacy under the pretense of prayer requests. I saw how my concerns about church members had planted seeds of doubt and division in countless conversations. I saw Lisa Morrison, the woman I had been gossiping about during the service, and I learned the truth about her situation. Her husband Mark was not absent because of marriage problems. He was deployed overseas with the military, something she had asked the church to keep private for security reasons. She was stressed and tired because she was raising 3 small children alone while worrying about her husband's safety in a war zone. My speculation about their marriage problems, whispered to Carol during the service, had been completely wrong. But I watched in horror as that speculation spread through the church over the following weeks, adding to Lisa's burden and making her feel even more isolated and judged. "This is why she stopped coming to church," Jesus said sadly. "The place that should have been her safe haven became another source of pain because of careless words." I was crying now, overwhelmed by the damage I had caused without ever meaning to hurt anyone. "Lord, I did not know. I thought I was helping. I thought I was being a caring Christian." "The heart is desperately wicked," he replied. "You convinced yourself that your curiosity was compassion, that your gossip was concern, that your judgment was wisdom. But the tongue is a fire, and you have been setting blazes throughout my church." He showed me more scenes from my life, conversations I had forgotten, comments I had dismissed as harmless, information I had shared that was not mine to give. I saw how my words had affected people's relationships, their faith, their standing in the community. I watched families leave churches because they felt judged and gossiped about. I saw young people grow up cynical about Christianity because they witnessed the casual cruelty that passed for Christian conversation. I watched marriages damaged by rumors that started with my innocent observations. "But it was not just you," Jesus continued, showing me the broader picture. "This sin has infected my entire church. My people have forgotten that their words carry the power of life and death." He showed me the spiritual world behind gossip and slander. I saw demons gathered around every conversation where Christians spoke carelessly. These evil spirits fed on the division, the hurt feelings, the broken relationships that resulted from careless words. I watched as these demons whispered suggestions into people's ears. "Did you hear what she said about you? You should tell someone else about this. You have a right to defend yourself. They deserve to have their reputation damaged." The enemy was using Christians' own words to destroy the unity that Jesus had prayed for. The church was being weakened not by outside persecution, but by internal destruction caused by tongues that were supposed to be praising God, but were instead spreading poison. "This is why so many lose their way," Jesus said. "They come to my church seeking love, acceptance, and truth. Instead, they find judgment, gossip, and cruelty disguised as Christian concern. They see my people behaving no differently than the world, and they conclude that faith makes no real difference." I thought about all the people I had known over the years who had walked away from church saying they felt hurt, judged, or tired of the gossip. I had always assumed they were just being too sensitive or making excuses. First, Jesus said, "You must truly turn away from this sin, not just feel sorry about the results, but grieve over the sin itself. Recognize that your careless words have wounded my body and hurt my kingdom." As he spoke, I felt the full weight of my sin in a way I never had before. It was not just that I had made mistakes or been imperfect. I had been actively damaging the very church I claimed to love and serve. I had been a tool in the enemy's hands while thinking I was doing God's work. "I am so sorry," I cried. "I never meant to hurt anyone. I never meant to damage your church." "I know," he said with endless compassion. "And that is why I am sending you back, not to punish you, but to warn others. This sin is so subtle, so normal, so wrapped in religious language that few recognize it for what it is." When his hand touched my forehead, forgiveness flooded through me like a cleansing river. The crushing weight of guilt and shame dissolved instantly, replaced by pure determination to make things right. "Tell my people," he said, "that I am calling them to control their tongues. Tell them that love covers many sins, but gossip exposes them unnecessarily. Tell them that their words have the power to build up or tear down, to heal or to wound, to unite or to divide." He showed me one final vision. The same congregation I had seen before, but now many of the people were free from their chains of words. They were speaking life over each other, building up instead of tearing down, protecting reputations instead of destroying them. I watched churches where gossip had been replaced by genuine prayer, where criticism had been turned into encouragement, where judgment had given way to grace. These churches were growing, thriving, drawing people to Christ instead of driving them away. "This is what happens," Jesus said, "when my people learn to use their tongues for blessing instead of cursing, for building up instead of tearing down." I felt myself being pulled back, away from that place of perfect truth, back toward my physical body. But Jesus' final words followed me. "Remember, Susan, every word matters. Every conversation is a chance to spread life or death. Choose life." I woke up in the hospital with machines beeping around me and Robert's worried face nearby. The medical team looked amazed because I had been dead for 8 minutes with no brain damage. But I knew it was not medical science that brought me back. It was God giving me a second chance to warn his people. When I recovered enough to speak, I began sharing what I had seen. I apologized to Lisa Morrison for gossiping about her family and learned the truth about her deployed husband. I confessed to my pastor about my years of spreading information that was not mine to share. Some people thought I was being too hard on myself, but others recognized the truth and began examining their own words. Our church slowly transformed as people learned to guard their tongues, and families who had left because of gossip began returning. The atmosphere changed from judgment to genuine love, and people felt safe sharing their struggles without fear that their private pain would become public conversation. My name is Suzan Denis. I died for 8 minutes and learned that the sin I thought was harmless was actually destroying God's church from within. The tongue has the power of life and death. Every careless word matters. Every conversation is a choice between spreading life or death, between drawing people to Christ or driving them away. Jesus is watching and listening, and one day we will all answer for how we used the power He gave us to speak. Guard your tongue, because your words, hey,